Good morning, all. This is Bobby Sanchez with the Wordsmith. I'm making this video to talk about the types of resumes that are in the job market these days and what the advantages and disadvantages of each are. There are three types of resumes that are commonly used here in the United States. The first one is the standard chronological, which is the one you usually see, that has your, a profile and then maybe your employment experience and your technical skills, with your employment experience being utilized from the most recent going backwards, okay, and then your education and etc. That is the most common, and that is what the system is set up to handle. Okay, some of the less common resumes, which are relevant and are very advantageous in certain situations, are the functional resume and the combination resume, in addition to the chronological resume. The functional resume is a resume that emphasizes your skills, okay, in a particular area, such as accounting, as an example. Okay, you be an accountant and you have skills in certain types of software, you handle certain kinds of clients, you may have a certification, you may have been instrumental in the operation of a particular company, that kind of thing. Those are the skills that you would utilize. And the subtitles would be those skills, like as an example, being an accountant, audits. Okay, if you were an auditor and an accountant, then you would type in the word auditor on a piece of paper, and then you would have your, list your what you did as an auditor. I audited human resources. I audited the finance company. I audited, tax returns for the IRS. Those kinds of things, and then each section would be a particular skill that you wanted to emphasize. And it's probably a good idea that if you choose to use this kind of resume, that you keep it down to 2 sheets. Okay, a lot of people know how to do a lot of things, but it needs to be relevant to the target job that you're after. So keep that in mind. The third kind of resume is called a combination, and combination resumes are less common, but they are advantageous in certain situations. This is a combination of the chronological as well as the functional section that I just mentioned. It's a resume that contains both types of information. Again, the emphasis is on the skill sets as opposed to where you worked, but you're listing your employers in backward chronological order on this kind of resume. Now, the advantages of each resume can be the situation that you find yourself in. Most people, they go to work and they work at a company for a certain number of years, and then they might decide they're bored. They might decide they want to reach up a little bit and stretch their skills. They may, there may be situations in their life, maybe a significant other wants to move to a different state, and you need to find a job in that new state, that kind of thing. So things like that can happen. Okay. So the standard chronological is the one that and I'm saying this from the perspective as a recruiter. The standard ones that are easiest to handle for recruiters. They fit into the system. The systems that they use as recruiters are called applicant tracking systems, and basically this handles the candidate or applicant's record from the time they get the resume until the time they are either set aside as not qualified or they are placed in the job. Okay. The system is set up to handle chronological resumes, so it's easily, you can, and this is all done by computer, not by people. So the resume is received and then is parsed into the computer, and then it is there for the recruiter when they do their keyword search. Because some companies, they get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of resumes, and not every recruiter can can lay eyeballs on every one of them. So they rely on keyword searches a lot. Okay, so again, the chronological type is the most common. The second kind of resume, the functional resume, tend to make recruiters suspicious. In a general sense, if you're trying to hide a gap, which a functional resume would do very well, or if you've been out of the workforce for a while, this kind of resume is not as common, but it takes some explaining, because if I as a recruiter get a functional resume, say for an engineer, I'm looking for an electrical engineer as an example, and I call this person and I see, I thank them for their resume, I thank them for their interest, and then I ask them, why are you using this kind of resume? Is there a gap in your employment history? Is there an issue? Because I would, that is something that I would need to know in order to represent them properly. If they come back and they say, I took time off to take care of my parents, and I've had that happen. I had a car accident, so I had to recover. I had a family member who needed assistance, or I had a death in the family, so I had to take time off. There's all kinds of legitimate reasons why a person may have a gap in their employment. They may have decided to take off work and go to school. That happens too. So they would need to say at least something to, let the recruiter know, first of all, why they're looking, what they're looking for, and what the issue is motivating them to want to look. Okay, so if I get a functional resume, I'm going to ask the candidate that. If I get a combination resume, I'm going to ask that as well. Okay. Some people, older job seekers in particular, tend to like to use the combination resume because it helps hide their age. And yes, even though ageism is illegal, discriminating on the basis of age is illegal, I can tell you that it exists, and it's very hard to prove. I myself have been out of work for 7 months. I'm being forced to take retirement because of it. For the record, I resent it, and I will do everything I can to fight that in the workplace. I mean, retirement, yes, and maybe I'm not being paid, but I have my agenda when it comes to fighting ageism, so I will do everything I can to do that. But anyway, back to the kinds of resumes. As a recruiter, I would ask those things. Those are things that I would need to know in order to represent them properly if I'm working for an agency. Now, let's say I'm a recruiter that works for a company. Now, the difference in that kind of recruiter is that a company recruiter will will represent the company in all of its positions that they're hiring for. They may have been assigned a certain number of positions, and if the position is not one in their lane, so to speak, they will refer them to the recruiter who actually handles that position. But basically, a corporate recruiter, as they're also known, is one that would handle different kinds of positions, different kinds of professions, like engineers, accountants, human resource personnel, technicians, whatever they're assigned by the company, and they would fill those positions. An agency recruiter, on the other hand, represents many clients, and they may emphasize more skill sets. Well, I'm a technical recruiter that specializes in IT, information technology, so I'm not going to be so effective in finding jobs for an electrical engineer, as an example. So therefore, those kinds of things need to come into play also. It helps to know the kind of recruiter that you're sending your resume to. But at any rate, if you're applying for a job, you're going to send the resume that is most advantageous to you. Now, the advantages of the chronological, as I said before, are the fact that it conforms to the necessity of the computerized system. Most of the time these days, you're not going to be talking to a person. You're going to send your resume to an email. That email is set up to automatically import your resume into a computer, and it will be entered into the company's applicant tracking system. So that is applicable to agencies as well as corporate. Okay, so you would definitely want to be mindful of whether you're talking to an agency or a company. Okay, your resume goes in there, and then when the recruiter gets an assigned job order, they will go into the applicant tracking system, and using keywords, they will pull up the resumes that are relevant to that position. Now, yours may or may not be in there, depending on what kind of keywords you put in there and what kind of skills you have. So basically that's, the bottom line, that's how they search. Okay, that's how recruiters search. They develop a call list then, and then they start calling these people or emailing them, depending. I tend to get more responses from people that I email rather than call, because it's less intrusive, and they have time to sit down and read it. And I for one respect that option. Okay, I have been a candidate myself, and I prefer to get notified of situations with email or maybe a text message. That would be fine too, because it's on my phone and I can look at it and act on it when I can. Okay, it also is something that they can do at work. If you text them, then they can respond at work and on their own phone, and provided they work in a profession where they can do that. Or they might wait until their break if they're not allowed to do that, and then respond then. Okay, but they can respond, and they can do it discreetly. One thing that recruiters need to remember is that you do need to be discreet in your job search, especially if you're handling passive candidates, because if you're looking at passive candidates, you're looking at people that are not actually looking for work. You're hunting for skills. You're a headhunter, right? That's another, recruiters are also called headhunters. Those kinds of things, a person has to be mindful of how, their target responds, okay? So, like I said, I prefer email and texting to actually picking up the phone and calling for that reason. Some companies demand that recruiters actually use a phone when it's not appropriate. And in my mind, when I'm working, don't tell me how I have to contact my candidates. Allow me to contact my candidates in a way that respects and supports them. Because if I don't show them that respect and support, they're not going to talk to me. There's nothing that says they have to talk to me, okay? My goal is to fill the job with, not only make the company happy, but I also have to make the candidate happy. That's the part of the equation a lot of recruiters forget, okay? So this communication, starting with the kind of resume that a person uses, is important, both for the candidate and the recruiter. And a word to you candidates out there: when a recruiter calls you, they may be paid commission or salary, it doesn't matter. The idea is that they have a valid job that they need to fill, and they think you are one of the candidates that can fill that job. And if you're looking, then you're gonna be mindful of that. Don't be curt with a recruiter. Recruiters are not servants. They don't have to talk to you either. Remember that, okay? They can move on to the next candidate. And there's very few jobs in this world where you're the only candidate. Very, very few. So please, communication is a two-way street, okay? So getting back to the resumes, the conversation starts based on the resume. If there are gaps in your history, the recruiter is going to want to know about that. If you're talking to, a corporation, and the recruiter represents a corporation, they're going to want to know about that too, okay? So try to have an answer ready, an answer that is plausible and positive. I mean, don't say that you just got out of jail, even if it's true, okay? If you're, it's important for candidates to be upfront in any former felon hiring programs, and that's a specialized type of recruiting, which I haven't done, so I'm not going to speak to that. The idea is that you want to make sure that your recruiter sees the best of you, because that resume that you worked so hard for and that you put together and you thought you had perfect is the resume that's going to represent you by proxy, okay? It's going to stand in for you, okay? So when the recruiter first sees your resume, you are that resume. Now, if you don't want to appear careless, if you don't want to appear slovenly, if you don't want to appear unprofessional, you will take care that whatever resume you use, you will take care to make sure that the grammar is correct, that all the words are spelled right, and that you are, willing and able to talk to somebody about the job you applied for or a job, okay? Now, this is, I don't know anybody that has talked about the different kinds of resumes. I run a resume service called the Wordsmith, okay? I myself have been a recruiter for 27 years. I do know my way a little bit around the job market. Now, I'm not saying that my solution, my recommendations when I do your resume is going to be perfect or spot on. I'm not even going to say that it'll be perfect. That's why when I contact a potential candidate for a resume, not as a recruiter, but as a resume writer, I tell them up front that communication is extremely important and that they have the option to review it and give me a chance to make changes to their liking. And when they do request changes, I will use the benefit of my expertise to say, yes, that's a great idea, or why don't we do it this way? That kind of thing. I don't want to come off as an expert who knows everything, because if I was an expert who knew everything, I would definitely be in a different tax bracket. I would be poor and broke like I am now, okay? So, that's very important, okay? If you want a resume done by me, you will have plenty of chances to correct and revise what it is. I am currently running what I call a LinkedIn special, where you get a resume and you get a cover letter and you get a paragraph for your LinkedIn profile, all for $100. I think that's a good deal. If you want a resume by itself, then I will charge $75, okay? Again, whether you get just the resume or whether you get the package, you are going to have plenty of chances to revise and suggest revisions all along the way. Please don't get the resume on the first draft and say it's the worst thing you've ever seen and I want my money back, okay? You have to be able to communicate what you want, and you can consider it practice for the interview when you know how to communicate with your resume writer that, no, I don't want this, I want this, and this is how I want it worded, and have a discussion about it instead of being angry. I have had a customer who decided on the first draft that it was the worst resume she'd ever received, and that I was unprofessional, and that I was definitely not worthy of my craft, and all of this kind of thing, and she wanted her money back. Well, she went to PayPal, and she went to LinkedIn, and there's a program in LinkedIn called ProFinder, where you list your business and your skills, and people in LinkedIn who want that service, they contact you. Well, as a result of her complaining and not giving me a chance to do my job, I was denied future access to ProFinder, and that put a big dent in my resume business. That was about 3 months ago, and ever since then I've been trying to fight with LinkedIn to give me a chance to go back on, because I don't believe I did anything wrong. If a customer decides they don't like my services, that's fine, but to try to ruin me like that, I really don't appreciate it. I have a right to live too, okay? So communication is key. If you don't like what I do, let me know and give me an idea of how to fix it to please you, okay? Give me a chance, that's all I ask, okay? I look forward to working with each and every one of you. I do hope that by seeing this, you'll want to support my channel, and I'm giving you some information on how to support. I do take donations. I have a Patreon account, and I also have a PayPal account. If you would like to support my channel, please donate. Even $1 would help. Okay? I thank you for your time, and this is Bobby Sanchez signing off.